Good evening. I want to tell you why I think it's important to know about the occult, and we're going to try to divide it up so that we're able to see what's meant by the occult. If you were to take a look and see the fastest growing religion in the United States right now, most people would say, give me a guess, quick guess. Islam, yeah, that's the fastest growing major religion. The fastest growing of all religions, though, happens to be Wicca. Now, Wicca is just the formal title. Pagan's the other term that is used. Not all pagans are Wiccans, but all Wiccans are pagans. We're going to go through it. I'll explain that a little bit as we go through. The source for my material this evening is I sat down this last week and had a discussion with a person who has been a practicing witch for the last 20 years of his life. I'm just going to give you a little bit of an encouragement just generally in your life. It is easy to skim things from the internet. It is easy to check out a book. What makes it more difficult, though, is actually being able to find people. That's one of the great blessings, I think, of the internet, though, is that's going to allow you the chance to be able to find somebody and then be able to sit down there and say, hey, this is what I have heard about you, or this is what I have seen written about you. Or have you ever noticed in Hollywood that this is the kind of vibe we get? And I would guess, especially for those of you who are conservative Christians, you know how you can be misrepresented. Because for a large percentage of people who say that they are conservative Christians, well, you tell me, stereotype of a conservative Christian if you don't happen to be a conservative Christian. Give me some of the words that are used to describe us. Judgmental. Go ahead. Reactionary. Other things that you can think of. Hateful, homophobic, can't change. And you go through that. Now, I'm going to guess that probably very few of you, if I would say, are you a hateful, judgmental person? You're not going to raise your hand. Why? Because that's not who you are. If we are misrepresented, you can also count on other people being misrepresented as well. So just generally in your life, that's a good way of doing it. Total number of pagans, which is a polite word. Witches, that's acceptable. Pagans is preferred. New Age, not preferred. New Age to people who are pagans or Wicca or Druids smacks of some kind of a marketing tool. And that was what one of the man I interviewed said. Don't call me New Age. New Age is Hollywood. New Age is trying to sell people crystals and fancy vacations. All right. With that in mind then, before we go any further, why don't we bow our heads in prayer. Dear Father in heaven, help us to be what you ask us to be, and that is informed and also secure in the biblical truths that we have. And then, Lord, also lead us to do that next thing that is not always so difficult, and that is to be, as you have asked us, to show love to all people. In fact, you said that all people will know that we are your disciples if we love one another. Help us to love those who are part of your church, the invisible church, and help us also to love those who are not yet aware that they have been redeemed by the same God we have been redeemed by. In Jesus' name we ask this. Amen. All right. If you open up your little booklets, that should give you a kind of an idea of where we're going to be going today. I want to cover paganism. And the paganism will be of the mild sort. This would be Wicca, Druids, Neo-Pagans. And then we want to move on towards the end with a little bit more of the more spectacular forms of the devil's work among us. Pagans, fifth largest religion in the United States. Number one, take a guess. Christianity. Number two. Yeah, Islam. Number three, Judaism. Number four, Hinduism. And number five, ahead of Buddhism, are now Wiccans. Fifth largest, probably about 750,000 to about 1 million. The problem when you're talking about pagans and neo-pagans is that it's very difficult to get an accurate read. You don't go to church if you are a Wiccan. You go out to the forest if you happen to be close to one. And you worship very often solitarily. One other thing with that. Oh, yeah. Most of our trends come from Europe, just socially, so you grasp this. Entertainment trends always go from the United States and they go towards Europe. Our music sets the tone for Europe. Our movies set the tone for Europe. Social trends always come the opposite way. In Europe, in England, in 1837, they got rid of slavery. It wasn't for another 25 years that till we got rid of slavery. In Europe, abortion became illegal 40 years before it came here. Right now in England, Halloween is more celebrated than Easter. In some places, Halloween is celebrated more than Christmas is. So that gives you kind of an idea once you understand where the trends come from. So you look at Europe and you say, okay, where are they right now? What is really, really growing? Because that's the next thing that's going to land on our shores. First of all, the lure. Hey, Mr. Crowley. Mr. Crowley's kind of the bad boy of anything to do with pagans. He was once called the wickedest person in the world. And unfortunately, what happens then with something like that is it paints a picture that is not true for everybody else. So people associate Mr. Crowley with worshiping Satan. Thing is, Wiccans don't believe in a Satan. They don't believe that there is a devil. They believe that there are generally forces that are negative, but those negative forces don't find themselves in one cornerstone archenemy like we would say. If I would say, where's the origin of evil? You'd say, well, of course, that's the devil. For them, they would say the origin of evil is found in each one of you. And that in each one of us, when it is not in line, and we'll talk about this later on, there is something called the rule of three. When I am not in balance with my spirit, and my spirit will tend to go through many, many reincarnations. The technical term is metempsychosis. It goes through all of these things. My spirit picks out for me certain things that I'm supposed to learn. And it's a lesson. So as I come back and I'm Leon Ehlert, before I was born, my spirit sat down and talked a little bit about me, like there's almost two of me, and came to the conclusion that I was going to have to learn certain things. Then, as I move through my life, I either learn those things, which is good, or I don't learn those things, which is bad. When I don't learn those things, and when there's enough of you who don't learn those things, then collectively we become evil. Not because we're influenced by Satan, but more so because we have this team approach to moving through time and space. All right, the lie. Got to go over here. Steve, what did you say you had to do? 6? Is that what you want? Okay. There you go. First of all, paganism. Sometimes it's called Neo-Paganism. Neo-Paganism, its history goes back well before the birth of Christ. So we're not talking about anything that is new, although Neo-Paganism began to be used in the 1960s a little bit more. Not part of the 7 main religions. In other words, if you ask somebody and you say, okay, what exactly makes you a pagan? The reply generally is, I am a spiritual person. I recognize forces for good and for evil. There may or may not be a God, a higher power out there. Pagans are pretty much divided on that. I can't really know for sure, but what I do know is I'm not Christian, I'm not Muslim, I'm not Sikh, I'm not Jewish, I'm not Buddhist, and so forth. So you're not part of the 7. And just a quick sidelight there. I think sometimes when we're thinking about atheists, we kind of do it like this. At least this is the way the schema in my mind. We say, okay, here's an atheist. And then like right over here, this is the agnostic. So you're a little bit closer to us. And then over here is the person of faith. I really don't think that that's accurate. The agnostic is the one who says you can't be sure about anything. That really is a Wiccan. A Wiccan says there may be a God, but then again there may not be. It is the atheist and for our sake, the Christian who really share a common foundation. Because we say knowledge is possible. I say, I believe there is a God. Can I prove that there is a God? No. We see fingerprints around, but you can't sit down with a friend and say, this is how I can prove to you in a mathematical formula that there is a God. That is the exact same problem that an atheist has. Because what is an atheist trying to prove? That there is no God. But do you see the problem with that? You can never prove that something does not exist. It's impossible. What you can say is, I don't see evidence for it right here. I don't see evidence for it right here, right now. I can't see the evidence with the senses that I have, but finally in the end, to prove that God exists, to prove that God doesn't exist, amounts to the same conundrum. And I think that that's useful because that's a starting point for talking to people who think that there is no God. Agnostics, on the other hand, that's a whole different ballgame. Because an agnostic will say, well, is there a God? Yeah, maybe. But maybe again, there's no God. How can I know? I can't know. Wiccans fall into that broad category. All right. Number 2, these are some of the other names. Druidism. Anybody associate Druidism with one spot? In England, Stonehenge. Stonehenge, the people gathered together, worshiping nature. And then Wicca, of course. Now a little bit about their beliefs. Oh yeah, before we get to that. Here's just an encouragement, I think, generally. This is an Indian train. And somebody once told me this, and I think it's worth thinking about. And that is, be the most boring person on the train. In other words, if you are going with somebody, if you are the most exciting person, if you have the best jokes and you do the most talking, and everybody in the room or in that train, which is difficult to see, if everybody there thinks that you are just the most smashing storyteller of all time, when you leave, what have you gained? Absolutely nothing. You're the same person who walked into the train or got into the train because you have no more stories. If you are the most boring person in that train, though, if the rest of the people in that train get off and say, that guy is, or female, that's a cipher, that's a zero, you're not going to impress anybody, but what will you have gained? You will have gained that knowledge. When you are around other people, whatever it happens to be that most boring person on the train, you're going to have a lot more opportunity to be able to gather information. All right, back to paganism. First of all, they operate by the rule of 3. I would say you could use the word karma for this. The rule of 3 means anything that you do that is good will be times 3. Anything that you do that is bad will be times 3. So that's the general idea as you're moving through life. I will do certain things, and if I'm nice to somebody, that's going to rebound towards me 3 times for the good. If I am in some way not fulfilling my duty, not doing what I'm supposed to, that will rebound on me times 3. And all of this karma, and karma's not good or bad. Karma's neutral. All it means literally is the fruit of one's action. Usually we think about it as being maybe good or bad, purely neutral. If I build up enough karma that's good, I start to move up. In Neo-Paganism, here paganism, you go through series of reincarnations. The man I talked to said that he doesn't have a lot of recall, but he does remember it being about the year 1200, and he's on a battlefield. And he turns to his friend during the battle, and his friend is going to get hit with an arrow or something, and he jumps in front of him, and he takes the arrow for his friend, and he dies. And he says, I'm almost positive that I was in England because I could understand the language. I don't know how else I would do that. And he's also very convinced, he said, because there are times that he will move through a crowd and he will recognize somebody that he has never met before, and he knows that he must have met them in a previous life. And that goes to that next thing. In reincarnation, I think the tendency, at least I have thought this way, is that it's kind of a solitary thing. I move through reincarnation. I'm a good guy. I come back a little bit stronger. I'm bad. I come back eventually as an animal. Some thought you can go animal and then reptile, insect. You can actually move down into the vegetable world if you're not faithful to your dharma, your duty. But in Wicca, and you can start to see why it would be very attractive, you move with a team. So the spirits, I will speak as if I am a Wiccan. A Wiccan is just somebody who follows Wicca. Wicca just means it's an Anglo-Saxon word, it means somebody who can bend nature. So it's just an old Anglo-Saxon word. It means I can take nature. Now you're going to start to see a connection. It is very popular among people who are concerned with the environment. Super popular. Where is it also very popular? Among college-aged people, because you tend to be a little bit more demographically concerned with people who are older. I would encourage you in that. I think people my generation, older, I think unfortunately what can happen sometimes is people are so afraid that anytime you say something good about the environment, that you're worshiping the environment, that we've had a tendency not to be involved in it. But we, as Christian people, of all people, should understand that the environment is God's gift to us and not just something for us to be consumed with, to consume. Anyway, so you move through your life and you have this little team that you go with. And so I will be reincarnated, and I will be reincarnated with a group of other people. Now, I'm not necessarily going to know who they will be, but very often it might be my pet. They are called pet guides. And so as I get through to the next life, the person who becomes the pet didn't necessarily do anything wrong. It's not like you're punished by being the pet, because sometimes pets, probably in America, have pretty good lives. I don't think I want to be a pet in India. But you're a pet, and you're attached to a family, and that pet is there in order to give you encouragement. So you go to be a pet, and you see why there's the debate then about whether there's a God or not. Because I asked the witch, I said, but who decides all of this? I mean, who says, okay, enough good karma, enough terrible karma, so you come back as somebody famous and you come back as a carrot? Who decides that? And they said, well, we really don't know. Very agnostic. We really don't know. It might be like a god or a goddess. Sometimes you hear that phrase, Gaia. It just means the earth. The earth mother. That's the one who takes care of this. Sometimes the thought is that my spirit gets together and they decide in advance before I am reincarnated. In other words, I've died. My person, I'm going to use the word soul. My essence, call it what you want to. My soul leaves, and after that, there's a little conference. And the conference decides, what do I need to learn that I did not learn last time? They say, well, maybe patience. Maybe I need to learn how to suffer. Maybe I need to learn how to treat other people. And then my spirit will reincarnate me into a form where I will be able to learn that lesson. What do you do then with the essence of evil? And I think here's where it becomes very a little controversial, I thought. And I asked him, I said, well, is there such a thing as evil? And he said, well, there are a number of decisions that we can make that have negative consequences, but that, of course, is no answer. I said, but is there? And so you pick the baddest of all the bad guys, and you say, what about Hitler? Here was the reply. He would not say that Hitler was evil, but that Hitler came back as Hitler because a lot of people needed to hear or to learn some difficult decisions or some difficult lessons. I don't think I would want to share that with a Jew. If I were him, it's like, what's the origin of Hitler? Well, actually, you Jews needed to learn some pretty hard lessons, and so the spirits got together and they say, Adolf Hitler, this is a really good choice. But once you have eliminated evil, once you have eliminated the devil, what do you do with things that seem evil-like? All right, rule of 3. And one big commandment. Do what you will, so long as it harms none. This applies especially to sexual matters. Very, very strong in the homosexual community, bisexual community, transgender community. Because it's very open and accepting. Because once again, maybe I am a homosexual because I was a homophobe in my previous existence. So my little spirit guy got together with me and he said, you know what we have to do? That guy's homophobic. So next life, he's going to be homosexual. And then he's going to learn what it's like to be on the other end of the spectrum. Paganism also is very decentralized. So again, I think it appeals to people who don't like authority. There's no book you can go to how to be a witch. The Witch's Bible. There's going to be stuff that can be marketed that way, but there's no Bible, no Quran. There is no pastor. There is no church hierarchy. There is no church. There are no offerings. Worship most often is solitary. So what do? He said he walks out there and most days he goes to the woods and he communes with nature. He becomes one with the spirits around him. He begins to look and to see what is the goose trying to tell him by flying overhead. What is the squirrel trying to communicate with him? What lessons can he learn about being a squirrel so that next life, when he might be a squirrel, he can be the best squirrel that he can possibly be? He said, except for 4 key holidays. The highlight of Pagan's year, Halloween, which would make pretty good sense. Halloween is the beginning of the new year. So New Year's, ours obviously January 1st, or Advent for Christians, I suppose. Halloween. The other ones are then the winter solstice, shortest day of the year, vernal equinox, summer solstice, and then he says the one in the fall, the autumnal equinox, you know, when the days are exactly matched up day and night. He said that's not such a big one because everybody's getting ready to celebrate Halloween. There's that little phrase there, and this is his. Darkness is light turned inside out. It's one of those little phrases that's often used. That when you look at darkness, all you've done is you've taken the light and you've turned it inside out. In other words, they're good and bad and light and dark. There can be no dark unless there's light. There can be no shadow unless there is sun. And so that all of the things that for us we separate, we say, okay, this belongs to the realm of good, this belongs to the realm of evil, and that they're clearly separated. All of those things are very holistic. Life and death, other people, everything's merged together. And we have a warning here. If you have your Bibles on your phones, so forth, if you could look up Ephesians chapter 4, verse 27. Accusing a pagan of worshiping the devil would be the same as accusing an atheist of worshiping God. It doesn't make any sense. So we have to move past the idea of saying, well, these are witches, they're devil worshipers. That's simply not true. Kate, is that a hand there? Oh. No, that's okay. Can I just point out something to you? And since I know Kate, I feel comfortable with that. That was a classic example of girl sorry. I think I might have explained this again. Have you noticed that girls sorry and guy sorry is not the same? Guy sorry is always this. Guys, I'm going to give you gold. This is gold. When girls say sorry, they do not mean the same thing as you mean. When I say I'm sorry, it's like, I screwed up. It will not happen again. Girl sorry is, don't be mad at me. Kate, that was girl sorry, wasn't it?
I mean, a little.
And I think that's also why girls say things like, sorry, 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 sorry. And then guys are still mad, and then females will say, and I mean girls, I mean just the whole sex of femaledom, and females will say, but I said sorry. And we're going, but it doesn't matter because, there you have it, this isn't about pagans. But it is very confusing, gentlemen, is it not? Nod. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 27. Anybody? Stephen? 27.
And do not give the devil a foothold.
Do not give the devil a foothold. You know, I asked this man who's a witch, I said, is it like Jehovah's Witnesses, that the Wiccans go door to door and they ask you questions? He said, no, it didn't start like that. He was raised Lutheran. And he said, but he just became more and more interested in meditation, which was nothing really wrong with meditation. And he said then he became a little bit more interested in the environment, which I just said was very good. He said, but then the more interested that he became in the environment, the less interested he was in the hierarchy of the church. And the less interested he was in the hierarchy of the church, the less interested he was in God's Word. And the less interested he is in God's Word, he said, but I just keep feeling these spiritual things. He said, I'm a spiritual person, not religious, but spiritual. And the more I thought about it, I wasn't getting anything from organized religion. But then again, I was turning to the scientific community, and I'm just not a materialist. We use this incorrectly, I think, sometimes. We talk about people who are materialistic. We use it just for consumers. Philosophically, that really isn't what it means. Philosophically, what materialism means is there is only the physical. Every thought that you have can be traced to some kind of synapse in your brain, which can be traced to some kind of organ inside your body, to the whether you had the vegetarian pretzel sandwich, which didn't seem to be very popular, because I ate like 9 of them and there's still a bunch left, and the ham and the turkey. So because I ate the vegetarian one, I'm going to be having different thoughts. It's all material. So I ate the cucumber, you ate the ham, and now we have the difference. He said, I couldn't quite go the route of macroevolution. And he said, but I was still spiritual, and so I kept looking and looking and looking, and that was the foothold of the devil. Then one day, he said, I was talking to a friend of mine, and my friend said, well, what do you do? And he goes, I spend a lot of time just thinking about life, and I spend a lot of time outside, and I spend a lot of time meditating, and the more time I spend emptying my mind, the more that I come to the conclusion that there's something else. And that's when the Wiccan pounced and said, you already are something. You are pagan. All right, we'll move on. I'll entertain any questions about pagans at any time. Is this the way you view God and the devil? In that yin-yang sort of way? What I mean by this is, it's like you got God. We'll put God on that side with the white. You have God, and then you have the devil. And you have, God's got his little place that he rules, it's heaven. And the devil's got his little place that he rules, and that's hell. And God's got his followers, those are the angels. And the devil's got his followers, those are the demons. And it's kind of a balance. In the end, God always wins. But somehow it's this sort of flux. What I want to do is spend a couple of minutes as we transition from the occult in the sense of nature worshiping, Wiccan, Neo-Pagans. We move a little bit more into the more spectacular realms of the devil, and that would be possession, so forth. Is I want to correct, I think, 4 things. We know, of course, that the devil was an angel. Okay, we know that. We know when he fell. That would be Isaiah chapter 14. You can look that up sometime yourself, Isaiah 14. But what things bind the angels? Because if you find what binds the angels, you will also find what binds the devil. And I find it interesting how often the devil is given credit for more power than he has. So I want to give you 3 things that bind all angels, and I want to give you 1 thing that binds the evil angels specifically. So, first one, if you have a Bible, otherwise I can read it. Mark chapter 13, verse 32. Mark 13, verse 32. Go ahead, please.
But about that day or hour, nobody knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father.
Okay, the first thing that binds all angels, they are bound by time. God is not bound by time. Couple things about God. Number 1, he is not only omnipresent. That means that he's not only everywhere, he is also every when. And I think it's a little bit helpful to think of temporal matters in a spatial way. Okay, so you look and you say, I'm over here, and I go over there. Is God over there? Well, Liz, the answer is yes, of course. We don't have any trouble with that. Why don't we just pretend, though, that this is 2015 and that's 2020? God fills space just as surely as he fills time. So he moves through. He is everywhere. He is still looking back on the future. The devil, however, is bound by time, and we know that from this passage, because if you are able to move through time, you'd be able to figure out when Judgment Day would be. I would just go and say, okay, trying to figure out Judgment Day. How would I do this? I'll move to 2016. Still 2016. 2017. 2018. 2000. Back up. 2015, 2016, 2017, 2000. How come I can't get to 2018? By simple deduction, the devil is bound by time, just like you and I are. You and I, that moment, you can never go back. Time is kind of claustrophobic when you start to think about it, because you can never, it squashes you. You can never leave the present. I can't go back a split second. I can't go forward a split second ahead of it. And I think probably for some of you, you understand how this can be a tyranny. Have you ever just wanted to remain someplace because it is so awesome? Everything is good. Maybe it's a moment when you were growing up. Maybe it was a moment when somebody you love was still there, and you say, I just want to stay there. What is time always doing? It's pushing you, pushing you, pushing you. And then I'm going to guess, as college students, you don't necessarily look forward to things like, semester tests or writing, papers. And so what happens there is you want to get through that, but then you have time coming this way and it's pushing you back. You want to get through things, but you can never go ahead and you can never go behind. You are simply squashed in between it with no maneuvering. You will never maneuver a second in your life. This is very depressing, I know. You can go have another pretzel, I guess a cucumber pretzel sandwich. You're always squashed here. You can never move, stuck between the future and the past, always crushed in the present. God transcends that. The devil doesn't. The devil is caught just the same way that you and I are. Second thing, Job chapter 1, 6 and 7. Job chapter 1, 6 and 7. One of those strange occurrences in Scripture where the devil shows up. First time he's ever called Satan is in the book of Job. Shows up in heaven, and God has a little chat with him. God says, where you been? And here's the answer. You want to read it for me, somebody? Job 6 and 7. 1, 6 and 7, please.
One day the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them.
That's a weird one. And what does God do? He answers. Go ahead.
The Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" Satan answered the Lord, "From roaming through the earth and going back and forth."
This is a profoundly comforting passage. Did you notice what he says? God says, where you been? He goes, I've been on the earth, and I've been roaming back and forth. I was here, and then I went there. But do you understand? If he's there, then he can't be here. And if he is here, he can't be there. Just like you and I are bound by space, so also the devil is bound by space. The devil is not omnipresent. And here's what I mean about that yin-yang thing. It's like, okay, God's here. Yeah, but the devil is here too. I don't know that the devil is here. I don't know. Maybe he is. But I do know that if he is here, that there are places that he cannot be. And when you look through and you see Scripture, whenever it talks about possession, a physical possession, except for one case for sure, and maybe another one, it is never possessed by the devil. We will say devil possession or possessed by the devil. That's not true. Judas was possessed by the devil. That's clear. The only other reference, maybe yes, maybe no, and that would be Ananias and Sapphira when they had sold some property and they lied. They said to Peter, hey, here's the money, here's all, count it. It is all there. But it wasn't all there. And Ananias dies, but Peter, before he dies, says, Ananias, how is it that Satan has so filled your heart? Outside of that, every other reference, it's to a demon. Why? Because the devil can't be everywhere. If the devil is in me right now, it can't be some other place. God, of course, not bound by space. You know that? I want to add a nuance maybe to God being omnipresent. God is not only omnipresent, he is also immanent. That means that everywhere that God is, he is completely there. Don't think of God as being like God and you just stretch him. Okay, like I'm here, I put my foot here, put my arm here, put my other foot here. So where am I? Well, there's part of me is here, and part of me is down there. So we can say that I am here and here at the same time, but you recognize my hand is here, but my foot isn't. Whenever God speaks of himself, he always speaks of himself being immanently present everywhere that he is. That means that all of God is everywhere that God is. So, is God 100% here? Yes, he is. All of God that is God, complete God with nothing left over, is right here in this room. And 100% of God with nothing left over is in Kuala Lumpur. We'll pick someplace far away. That's God's immanence. Not only is he omnipresent, he is also immanent. Number 3. 1 Kings 8:39. I teach Old Testament, so you have a lot of Old Testament references. By way of full disclosure, not everybody agrees with me on the next point. There are some pastors who are just wrong, don't think that this is true. I'm going to try to make a case and prove to you that I'm interpreting this correctly. I think I am, but if you disagree with me, that's fine. I just want the cameras turned on your face immediately. Okay, so anybody that disagrees, please raise your hand so we can get over there right away. The last, third question, this is for all angels, is the devil able to read your thoughts? In other words, can the devil read what is in your mind? 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 39. Somebody care to read that for me? Pastor Thompson.
Then hear from heaven your dwelling place. Forgive and act. Deal with everyone according to all they do, since you know their hearts. For you alone know every human heart.
You know every human heart. You alone know every human heart. It helps to understand that in Mideast thought, you don't think with your brain. They didn't know what to do. I went to Egypt a couple of summers in a row. Airfare was cheap because there's a revolution. I'm just going to give you that. This comes free of charge. Find countries that are in revolution, airfare goes way down. It goes way down. And accommodation is super cheap. Civil war, that's a different idea. Okay, if it's a civil war, don't go there. But if it's a revolution, you should be okay. And if you're not, just tell your mom when you're a hostage. I don't know, Pastor Don told us that this is a good idea. And I think that was a good idea. Okay. They didn't know what to do with the brain. And that's why, like in tombs, I'll connect this all in a second. In tombs, they didn't save the brain. They would save your kidneys, because that's what you're going to need in the next life. They would save your lungs, because you're going to need that. They'd save your heart, because you're going to need that. But they kept trying to figure out, what's this squishy stuff in the head? Because, boy, it really stinks when it gets old. So what did they do with it? They would just take it out, and I'll explain how that happened in just a minute. And every bit of the thinking comes from the heart. And that's why so often in the Psalms, it always says, my heart. Your heart becomes your thinking apparatus. Okay. We're going to prove the more important point, and then we'll go to something that's not important, but I think it's just a fun fact. And that is, you know the thoughts of man. You alone know the thoughts of man. That's why I think it's such an important passage. Because through divine inspiration, it says, only you alone, Lord. Do I believe that the devil can see into my thoughts? No, I do not. I see no scriptural support for that whatsoever. I do know that there are some pastors who disagree. I don't know what the scriptural support would be for that. I think it becomes a yin-yang thing. It's like, okay, the devil can do this. Yeah, and God can too. Well, the devil's everywhere. Yeah, and God's everywhere. I think that's backwards. No. Bound by time? Devil's bound by time. God's not. Bound by space. God's not. Devil is. Bound by knowledge? Yeah, there are things that the devil simply does not know. He cannot know it. Okay, so how did they get the brain out in mummification? For a long time they thought this. They thought that they had a hook, and they would just like stick it in your nose and they would pull the brain out, okay? And then the problem is they didn't record how they mummified. It was like top secret. It was like the formula for Coca-Cola or whatever. And so they didn't share it. And so for thousands of years, they found these long needle things, and they said, okay, they pulled the brain through the nose. Then in the 1990s, there was a guy named Dr. Robert Breyer, and he did a mummification on a guy from Illinois. I don't know. Anybody here from Illinois? Bears fan? Okay. And he said it doesn't work. You can't do that. So they figured out what happened was they'd stick the wire in there and then they'd whisk it really fast and it would just kind of shred the brain. And that also explains why Egyptian mummification tables are always kind of at a slant. You know, you would think if you could build a pyramid, you could also build a table. And you know, and that was a big problem because they're going, okay, you did a bang-up job on all these pyramids, but your table ability stinks. Well, it makes sense because they would tip you over, they would do the whisk thing, and then they would turn you, and then the brain would just come right out there. So that was free of charge, as I told you. Okay, bound by knowledge, things that the devil does not know. He does not know what I am thinking right now. He cannot know that. Last thing, this is not of all angels. It is of the evil angels, though. And I could give you this is a good thing to do. I have it right here, John 13:2. The evening meal was being served, and the devil had already prompted Judas Iscariot, son of Simon, to betray Jesus. Do you ever wonder why it was that the devil would do so many things that were counterproductive to his goal? His goal is never to get you to sin. That's a little goal. But see, more than me, more than you, he knows what happened on the cross. You and I, we see that with the eyes of faith. We rely on secondhand, inspired information. The devil, he was there. He witnessed it. He was also there when Jesus burst out of the tomb. So he knows not only the sinfulness that we go through, but he also knows the fact that we are forgiven. So for any one of us to sin is not going to accomplish his ultimate goal. So why then does he keep pushing Jesus towards crucifixion? Only through a dead Christ can there be forgiven Christians. If Jesus lives forever, that means that you and I cannot. It's a simple formula. Somebody's got to die. You can't have this person living and this person living. And then the crazy thing, of course, is that the Father said, I'm going to go, let me think, my son or them? I'm going to go with them. So why does the devil prompt Judas Iscariot? If I was the devil's press secretary or advisor, I would say, you need to talk to Judas. Tell Judas, if he sticks with the program, that this is going to go big. It's going to burst out of Israel. We're going to go down into Egypt. We're going to go to Italy. He will make way more money if he just hangs on. Talk to Pilate. Tell Pilate, hey, your wife told you not to do this. And if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. But what does he do? In all of those cases, he is bound by rage. That's the last thing. Bound by rage. And maybe you know this, those of you who have tempers, maybe. Ever been just really hacked off at somebody? You're just angry. Could be at a roommate, or a parent, boyfriend, girlfriend. And you start to let them have it, and it feels awesome. Because you are just telling them every stinking thing that they have ever done wrong, and it's just coming out, it's free-flowing, and then about halfway through you realize, I am so screwed now. This is going to go so badly for me. This is going to ruin the relationship. It is all over. But at the very moment it's coming out of your mouth, it feels so awesome. That's the devil. At that very moment, so controlled by his anger and by his rage that he continues to do things that are counterproductive. There's a picture for the Cardinals a few years ago. He got pulled off. I got hooked. I don't remember what inning it was. He walked out and he just punches a fan. Not like a fan, like 2468 kind of fan, but this is like a fan with blades. Just smashed into the fan and cut his tendon, done for the year. Yeah, you have to know if you're a righty, you got to throw that punch with the left hand. What's he doing? Right, controlled by rage. That would be the last thing. So, very important to clarify when we're talking about the occult. What are the things that bind the devil? He is bound in 4 ways. He is not God's yang to God's yin. What time do we have until, like, I always forget?
Until about 7:20,
7:20. You're a very patient audience. Okay, I want to go on in here. Just a possession scene. I liked it, so I put it in. If you can, have somebody around you, read Mark chapter 5, 1 to 15. List 4 things that occur when Satan is in control. Okay, so if you have one, you can buy. I can certainly. My friend Liz.
Thank you.
Just go through that at your table. If you can read it out loud, give me 4 things that happen when Satan is in control. I think we'll learn 2 things from this. Satan never really changes his MO. His MO is largely the same as he used in the garden. It is the same that he uses today. So take about maybe 3 minutes or so and run through that. Can you give me some of the things that happen when the devil is in charge, when the demon's in charge? Just toss them out.
Self-hurt.
Yeah, self-mutilation. You know, and self-hurt, same. That is consistent. One of the things that people look for in modern examples of demon possession, which I do believe occur. I think that they're rare. I think that they're rare in the United States. My hunch is, though, again, this is just prophetic, so I don't know if I'm going to be right about this. The more that we move into a nature-type pagan influence, the more we're going to see the more obvious side of Satan. If you go to certain places, you don't have any demon possessions at all. You simply don't, because the devil's very wise. He knows that if he would show himself in a spectacular form, in the form of a demon possession, that's going to make a lot of people say, well, let me think about this. If there is a demon, then there really must be a God. In cultures such as in India and in Africa, in the Caribbean, there are lots and lots of demon possessions, lots of them. I know that in the western part of India, I never really got that far into India, that far west. There is a place where they have demon possessions and they will actually film them and people watch them on the outside. And I have no reason to doubt that they are true. The authority, if you're looking for just a way to follow up here, is Dr. Malachi Martin. He is a Catholic, and he was the one who is most responsible for demon possessions and exorcisms in the United States. I think he is retired now, but that was what he did. And I read an interview with him, and he said that any given year in America, in the Catholic diocese, he figures there's about 8 to 10 legitimate cases of demon possession. So very, very rare, but then again, there's reason for that. If you go other places, there's going to be lots. But one of the signs that they look for is self-destruction. Self-destruction also in drug habits, and self-destruction in the form of sexual habits that are extremely degrading. Not in the sense of promiscuous, but very degraded. Give me some other things, please. When you read through it, please.
Confusion of how many persons you are.
Yeah, did you notice that? The confusion? I don't know, which verse is that? Yeah, it's hard to tell who's speaking there. It's right there on the bottom. Then Jesus says, "What is your name?" My name, singular, is legion, for we are many. Do you notice that? That there's that confusion about who is talking. There are 6 stages, and we will not get to them, but there are 6 stages in every exorcism, and one of the stages has to do with the pretense, it's called. Pretense is when the demon inside the person pretends that he's not really there. And the people who are responsible for the exorcisms all say the same thing. It becomes very confusing because you will hear the voice of the person. And the person will say, I'm just very tired. Can we stop? I've just been under a lot of stress. I need some time. Can't you just leave me alone? So it's very hard to keep going. And then there will be these little, and that's the next stage, is that breaking point. The breaking point is when the demon actually reveals itself. And what's so interesting to me about this is that you read a modern example, and this book was written in the last 5 years, and it says there's this strange confusion in voices, and yet we go back to Mark's gospel, and what does it say? Exactly the same thing. My name is, we are. I think, at least at the beginning, it's the guy talking, and then at the end of the sentence, then the demons, plural, take over. Other things that are true.
They ask God for permission if they were afraid.
Yeah. No demon is an atheist. You have all kinds of people who will say there is no God. That never, ever comes from the devil or anybody who follows him. They don't say, well, you know, Jesus, you're just a man. You know, Jesus, you don't exist, and neither does your Father. They know. And then they also recognize that they are under the control of the devil. That's a key thing. If you've ever seen, Follow the Yellow Brick Road. What's that movie? Wizard of Oz. I don't know what that is. Some monkey phobia, I suppose. Wizard of Oz. You know that part where the wizard's on there? I am the mighty Oz. And you're all scared when you're a little kid because monkeys don't fly and stuff like that. And then he pulls the little dog, Toto pulls back, and you see this this guy, and he doesn't have a lot of power, and he's got some cranks and stuff like that. It's all illusion. With the devil, it's all illusion. What claim does the devil have on you? He has no claim on you. And I think where this becomes very important is, what are you doing for the devil that the devil can't do for himself? The devil cannot stop somebody from going to church. He has to convince you to stop going yourself. The devil has no power to stop a church being built in a foreign country. If he had that power, you would not be here. I would not be here. He doesn't have that power. He always has to find an ally. Always. Because he doesn't have any natural power anymore. So again, I ask you, what are you doing for the devil that he can't do for himself? Is it, in college it's a little different, but as you get older, you know, there's not as much money for churches for other things. How do you stop a mission when you can't stop a church from being built? He has to convince you it's not worth building a church. Strength, I think, would be the obvious one. But it is always, as Kate pointed out, it is always, always, always limited. Even in the case of Job, every single time that the devil wanted to wreak havoc in Job's life, he had to request from God, do I have permission? God said yes sometimes. This is a hard thing. This is back to theodicy. That means how do I mesh being a Christian with the all-living God and really struggling mightily? The answer is sometimes God removes his protective hands from your life, and he is going to allow the devil to wreak havoc in your life. There is no denying that. But he will always limit it. Always limit it. And this is the last thing before I give you the way, truth, and the life. You're going to need this knowledge. Jesus Christ is always in control. All right, the last part here, and we'll end with some good, strong gospel and then some encouragement here. Maybe you don't know that word there, a reminder in a henotheistic world. I think this is most accurate way to describe the United States today. Polytheistic, I'm not sure that there is polytheism. Polytheism means that there's lots and lots of gods, and they're all worshipped equally. How do you do that? We're not monotheistic anymore. But henotheistic means there's lots of different paths, but my God's best. I think we live in a henotheistic world where people say, oh, you believe in the Buddha? That's good. That's good for you. You happen to believe, you're a Wiccan? Hey, awesome. I like Wiccans, all about the natural herbal remedies. You happen to be a Christian? That's good. You got your deal, and you got your deal. Finally, in the end, I'm a Christian, and so I'm comfortable with that. But your route will get you to where you want to go. Christianity is very exclusionary, though. Jesus says that he is the way, the truth, the life. There is not any other option. And to that idea of henotheism, people will often say that religion, well, you have your opinion. I mean, you have the I don't know why, it's not that I'm getting a Wiccan vibe from you. Although the guy did say, you will know other Wiccans. So, but I don't know you, so I'm sure you're not. But that's not true. Religion can't be opinion. Opinion, don't confuse not knowing the right answer at the moment from there not being a right answer. Religion can't be opinion. This is opinion. What food is the best? You know, which color is the best? Which sport is the best? You can argue about this forever and ever and ever. That is not true about religion. Somebody is right and somebody is wrong. It is not a matter of opinion. You can be nice about this. But I would call people who say, well, that's just your opinion. You have your opinion and I have mine. No, it's not opinion. I am right or I'm wrong. There is either a God or there's no God. I am either saved by grace or I'm not. Somebody is right in that formula. Somebody is wrong in that formula. And then one last thing for you to consider here. And this is a guy who left the Christian church. And he explained why. His name is Anton LaVey, which isn't really very important. But this is the thing that's important for you. And I think as you move in a culture that is pagan, maybe with a small p, he writes, on Saturday night, I would see men lusting after half-naked girls dancing at the carnival. And on Sunday morning, when I was playing organ for the 10 show evangelists at the other end of the carnival lot, I would see these same men sitting in the pews with their wives and children, asking God to forgive them and purge them of carnal desires. And on the next Saturday, they'd be back at the carnival or some other place of indulgence. I knew then that the Christian church thrives on hypocrisy. I think that's a warning for us. What was it? It was not that he hadn't met a Christian. It's that he had met Christians. And the difficulty is that very often the sin is public, the repentance is private. And I'm not casting dispersions, I'm not doubting anybody's Christianity, but at least I know in my life that the sins tend to be public, but then when I recognize my sin, that tends to be private. If Christianity is going to regain its power in the world, I think a couple of things have to change. I think one of them is that we have to become better apologists. That means we have to be able to offer a defense for what we believe, what we know to be true. And then I think the second thing that we as Christians have to do is we have to listen. I asked Mark, the Wiccan, if you were to give one thing about Christianity or about Christians that most upsets you. And he said, you don't listen. Is that true of you? Doesn't matter. This is not a criticism. It's a critique. Criticism means you're doing something wrong. Critique means maybe you want to step back and say, now am I going to follow up my talk with Mark? Yeah. And next time I'm not going to be the most boring person on the train. I will wait, and then there will come that time that I can witness. So there you have it. I shorted the last part of it because I thought of the primary source material with Wicca. Do we have questions?
I don't know. Thank Pastor Ehlert for coming here.